Nobody saved these trucks. The studios didn't want them, the collectors didn't find them in time, and in some cases, nobody has found them at all. Start with the one that hurts. In the summer of 1977, Smokey and the Bandit became the second highest-grossing film of the year, behind only Star Wars. Burt Reynolds, Sally Field, a black Pontiac Trans Am running interference, and behind all of it, hauling 400 cases of Coors beer from Texarkana to Atlanta, a 1974 Kenworth W900A with a painted trailer and chrome stacks that caught every frame of sunlight the cinematographer could find. The truck wasn't a prop, it was a character. Jerry Reed singing and driving and grinning through the window of one of the most beautifully photographed big rigs in American cinema. The W900A's long hood, the stagecoach mural on the trailer, the gold pinstriping, deliberate choices. Someone spent money making it exactly right. Universal used 3 W900As across production, 2 1974 models and one 1973 50th Anniversary edition with a gold grille emblem. When production wrapped, 2 reportedly burned in a Universal Studios firehouse. The third has not been officially confirmed destroyed. It has also not been found. A collector spent years chasing it, hired a private investigator, worked contacts inside the trucking transportation industry, drivers who were on that set designers who knew the vehicles by sight. Every trail ended at the same place, 1990, somewhere in Arkansas, a field off an interstate where someone claimed to have seen a W900A sitting in weeds with the stagecoach murals still visible under the dirt. Nobody got a photograph, nobody got a name, nobody confirmed it. That truck, if it exists, has been sitting for 35 years. The most famous trucking film ever made. Not a single verified surviving production truck. That is where we start. 1 year after Smokey, Sam Peckinpah made Convoy. Chris Christopherson as Rubber Duck, a Mack RS 700L painted black with a silver duck mascot on the hood, rolling down the American Southwest. Peckinpah used 4 Macks. One was built specifically for promotional photography, a 1977 Mack RS 712 LST, purpose-assembled for the film. That truck took the close-ups. When production ended, it went back to Mack, who restored it to factory condition. Then sold it, and someone converted it into a dump truck. The most iconic rebel rig in trucking cinema spent years digging holes. What eventually surfaced was a different truck, a 1970 Mack RS 700, one of the actual production vehicles. Anthony Fox of Rome, Georgia, a tanker fleet owner, tracked it down and found something attached that mattered more than the truck itself. The original Trail Mobile tanker trailer from the Needles Bridge scene was still with it, hollowed out by the production crew, its aluminum skin held by angle iron, the interior still bearing mounting points for the 2 explosive charges detonated when troopers opened fire on Rubber Duck crossing into New Mexico. The bridge scene, in the actual trailer, still there. Fox restored the rig and brought it to the Southern Classic Truck Show. It now lives at the National Museum of Transportation in St. Louis. The truck that became a dump truck is still unaccounted for. The truck that survived in a tanker fleet got the museum. History finds a way. It just rarely finds the right truck first. Before any of the films that would define Spielberg's career, there was Duel, a 74-minute television movie about a traveling salesman stalked across the California desert by a truck. Spielberg chose a 1955 Peterbilt 281 because its narrow nose and split windshield gave it a face. He had the crew layer license plates from different states on the bumper to suggest a history of violence before the film had explained itself. The 281 went off the cliff at the end in a single take. No second truck, no backup. It had to work the first time because the truck would not exist afterward. For the theatrical release, 2 replacements were built, a 1960 Peterbilt 281 and a 1961 Peterbilt 351. The 1961 is the confirmed survivor. Brad Wyke of Lincolnton, North Carolina, bought it in 2009. and made a decision most restorers don't make. He left it weathered. The patina, the dust, the evidence of what the truck had been through, kept deliberately because cleaning it would erase exactly what made it worth having. Wyke brings it to his annual show every year, parked alongside the Plymouth Valiant that Dennis Weaver drove. People who haven't seen the film in 40 years walk up and go quiet. That is what a survivor looks like when it's treated correctly. Television production treated vehicles as consumables. A series runs 48 episodes and the trucks work constantly, accumulating damage, getting repaired mid-run, the hero unit and the stunt unit becoming indistinguishable somewhere around season 2. When BJ and the Bear ended in 1981, the K100 Aerodynes dispersed into a system with no preservation mechanism. The 1978 K100 Aerodyne from the first season ended up in Georgia, in a field, overgrown. A man named Mike Johnson found it in 2007 and photographed it before it moved. Paint faded toward pink, chrome pitted, weeds through the frame. The shape of that cab is unmistakable, but the truck had been returned to anonymity as completely as the Georgia climate could manage. Craig and Paul Sagehorn, father and son from Wisconsin, bought it and began the restoration. When they got deep into the cab, they found a small metal plate welded to the frame, a personal mark left by one of the Kenworth workers who built the truck in 1978, with no way of knowing what the truck would become or that anyone would ever look closely enough to find it. The truck was restored to original series specification. It still hauls occasional loads. It still appears at shows. Of everything on this list, the BJ and the Bear Kenworth is the only one that came all the way back. That distinction matters more than it might seem. Kit got the fame. The Pontiac Firebird Trans Am with the red scanner has been replicated and merchandised more thoroughly than almost any television vehicle in history. The Flag Mobile unit, the GMC semi that carried Kit, that opened its trailer doors at the end of each episode to receive the car back, received none of that attention when the show ended. It was found in a field in Idaho, 15 years. The Knight Rider historians, who also hold 2 screen-used Kit cars, acquired the truck and began something beyond a standard restoration. They are rebuilding the full interior command center set, the screens, the consoles, inside the actual trailer. Not a replica, the original trailer, rebuilt from the inside out, documented on their YouTube channel with the kind of detail that makes clear these are not hobbyists. There is something appropriate about the truck that carried the famous car being treated, finally, with the same seriousness as the car itself. King's condition when he sold the rights was that the film be shot in Maine. He knew the geography, the house near the road, the trucks moving too fast, the particular danger a rural highway carries when you understand what speed does to small bodies. The truck was a brand new 1988 Peterbilt 378, painted in Orinco livery, leased to Paramount by Northern New England Peterbilt. Purpose-built for one scene. When that scene was done, it went back to the dealer. Then it went to work. A timber company in Princeton, Maine, Murray LaPlante and Sons, acquired it and used it commercially for years. The truck that killed Gage Creed spent the following decade hauling logs through the Maine woods, occasionally taken to shows, then eventually parked in weeds. A Reddit user found it in a junkyard and posted photographs. The custom plate confirmed what it was. VL Tomorrow Oil purchased it in 2021 and began a full frame-up restoration. Donnie Green, the actor who drove it in the film, came up from Florida to see it during the restoration. The truck that exists at the intersection of Stephen King's darkest work and a Maine timber operation is being returned to its 1988 Paramount specification by a heating oil company in Baileyville. That sentence should not make as much sense as it does. Before BJ and the Bear, before Smokey, before the trucker film era consumed itself, there was Moving On. 2 seasons on NBC, Claude Akins and Frank Converse driving a 2-toned green Kenworth W900A VIT across 44 episodes that a generation of actual truck drivers have credited as the reason they got into the cab. Kenworth supplied 4 trucks, custom-built for MGM, VT903 Cummins, 13-speed transmission, the first double-sleeper Kenworth had ever produced. Akins and Converse got their chauffeur's licenses and drove them themselves. 3 trucks are unaccounted for. The original 1974 W925 went straight to commercial work. 7 or 8 owners, new engines, new paint schemes, the arrow stripe painted over. 30 years on the same roads it had been famous on, with no one aboard who knew what it had been. It was rediscovered and is currently under full restoration to its original 1974 specification. The truck that made a generation want to drive spent 30 years invisible. There is something in that which feels less like a story about a vehicle and more like a story about how quickly the world forgets what it loved. Ford produced the WT9000 as a commercial failure. The heavy truck market belonged to Kenworth and Peterbilt and Mack, and Ford's attempt at Class 8 produced a truck with limited purchase and a manufacturer that would largely retreat from that space within a few years. The Blue Mule, the 1974 Ford WT9000 Jan Michael Vincent drove through White Line Fever, was one of 2 WT9000s used in production. The hero truck went through the Glass House set in the finale, a sequence that cost $130,000 to stage in 1975. Whether it survived that in any meaningful sense is unclear. No confirmed survivor has been documented. Ford's exit from heavy trucking meant no institutional memory, no preservation interest, no dealer network tracking a specific cab over from a mid-tier trucking film. The Blue Mule disappeared, and the company that built it quietly left the same industry at roughly the same time. What remains is the film, and 74 minutes of the most compelling argument Ford ever made for a truck nobody bought. A second semi worked the Knight Rider production. Exterior sequences, approach shots, the stunt work, the flag mobile unit was too valuable to attempt. A working truck in the service of a famous truck. Its fate is not documented. It is mentioned here because it existed, because someone drove it, and because the preservation community that recovered the flag mobile unit has not yet accounted for it. If it is out there, it is almost certainly unidentifiable, repainted, re-engined, indistinguishable from the hundreds of GMC cabovers that worked American highways in the 1980s until they didn't anymore. This is the entry we know least about. That is itself a kind of answer. Henry Fonda's last road movie, a trucker dying of an unnamed illness who steals back his repossessed rig for one final run. The film arrived at the exact moment the trucker genre was cresting and was largely overlooked because Smokey and the Bandit arrived the same year and consumed all available oxygen. The Mack tractor used in production has no documented post-production history, no confirmed survivor, no collector story, no restoration thread, no Reddit photograph from a field somewhere. The film itself is difficult to find. When a film is forgotten, everything built for it tends to follow. The Great Smokey Roadblock is the entry that most honestly represents what usually happens. Not a field in Georgia, not a father and son from Wisconsin pulling something back. Just silence. The image on a screen and the absence of the object that made it. Most of these stories end here. The ones that don't are the reason this channel exists. 10 trucks, 1 confirmed survivor still rolling, 3 under active restoration, 2 reduced to ghost stories with no photographs, and 1 Snowman's truck that may be sitting in an Arkansas field right now, the stagecoach mural still visible under 35 years of dirt, waiting for someone to turn off the interstate and look. If you know where it is, you know where to find us.